Hey, hello everybody. So good to have you join us again today on the 411. And today I'm so super excited. Again, I sit with my friends, but we got a really special guest today, and that's Mr. Charl Van Wyk. Hello guys, how's it going there?
Oh, going well. Thank you. Good to be here.
Cool. Charl is the one guy I know who's been able to consistently run an effective and efficient youth ministry. And Charl, it must be for the last 18, 19 years we've known each other. And you just
Yeah.
pumping out disciples left, right, and center. And so it's so good to have you with us. And we're very excited to pick your brain on youth ministry in our current world that we live in, and just some of the things you've been able to do through COVID and keep youth ministry going. So, guys, grab a cup of coffee, stick with us, send questions if you have, and enjoy the conversation. So, Charl, you are currently at Branson Bible Church, and we got Tristan, who heads up our Velocity Youth Ministry at our church Riverside, and Sis, who is our intern this year. And he's done a phenomenal job getting involved in youth. He's got a passion to see teenagers come to know Jesus, but he's also like a sponge and has plenty questions. And a phenomenal guy, and he'd love to just pick all of our brains on some youth ministry things. So, Sis, I want to maybe hand over to you, and you can hit us with some of your questions, bud.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. And yeah, Daryl is right. Definitely a sponge. Someone who enjoys learning. And God has blessed me with a good group of friends like Daryl, like Trist, who know people like Charl. They themselves are phenomenal, but the people they know are also quite phenomenal. So yeah, maybe Charl, just to dive right into it. How have you defined a successful youth ministry?
So a successful youth ministry would one day be if a young person that you have ministered to is able to lead you in ministry.
Sure.
So taking a person, whether they're 15 or 14 or 20, helping them, discipling them in their leadership ability to one day lead worship, lead a church, lead a team that you can be under and that you can submit to their leadership. That to me would be the biggest success in ministry.
Sure.
So, Charl, how long have you been involved in youth ministry? I know we spoke about 17, 18 years, but I think you had started slightly before that. And just where did I said to you on the phone today, there's not many guys who get involved in youth ministry and stay involved in youth ministry. Often you get young guys, even like a Sis, who are aspiring to be a senior pastor, associate pastor, but there's not many who stick around just to be and influence youth. You know what I mean? So how long have you been in youth ministry? And
so
you
it'd be
definitely in the right
25
place?
years. Yeah, 25 years full time would be at the moment. So at present, plus you add maybe another 3 or 4, 5 years before that as a youth leader in churches. So let's call it 25 years. That would be correct.
And how did God grow your heart for teenagers? Because, like I say, you're not aspiring to move out of that space, but just your heart for teenagers.
So I think we often fall in a rut where we think we're aspired to something, and so youth ministry becomes a stepping stone for us to be something else. And I honestly believe the church has got it wrong, and so our mindset is wrong. If you want to be a senior pastor, you don't have to start as a youth pastor. And so that's where the fall away starts. If your heart is for something, you should be plugged in there. You don't start as a mechanic in a shop if you want to be a doctor. Surely that is not a stepping stone. So why are we doing the same thing? So the one reason I'm stuck in youth ministry and why I am the age I am and still involved is that I'm actually pushing the boundaries of senior pastors and senior leaders, going, listen, that is a training ground, and one can flex your spiritual muscles and your leadership muscles by being part of some form of young adults or youth ministry. But just to use it to step from one point to the other, it just makes no sense at all. What our passion is, what God puts on our hearts. And I've wrestled with many leaders through the years where they keep telling me you can't be a youth pastor anymore. And I'm like, says who? Surely, if that's my passion and that's my heart, then I need to be a youth pastor. And that's what like I said to you guys, I've still got juice. And I'm really trying to pave the way for younger people coming after me to be treated with a bit more respect, even though the title behind our name doesn't reflect what people think it should. And so I'm working really hard to pave the way for the Tristans and the Caesways who want to stay in youth ministry for 25 years, but can still be treated like an adult and not as a youth pastor, as a second grade, lower grade position job, which means I fight for, your futures, from salaries to job titles to positions in churches. So it's more than just loving the teenagers.
Sure.
Yeah, it's almost sad that it's a place where you see people have training wheels on. We'll give you this much authority, but as you say, some people are called to the space of youth ministry, and their passion is that, and we need to give those guys the permission and the authority to lead well in that space, for the kingdom of God. And it's not just training space. There's almost nothing worse than, and I think about it in schools, you've got a really good coach who has to teach, and so he's a really poor teacher but a good coach, or the other way around, where you've got a really good teacher who's a really bad coach. In the same way, in the youth space and youth pastors, you don't want a really bad youth guy who's aspiring to be a senior pastor because his heart is for older people. But again, fighting for the space of well-equipped youth guys and the authority to be able to lead well in that space.
Good. Well put.
Yeah, sure. And I think it leads into what I was going to ask next, and I think you've mentioned it, because I could imagine that with staying that long, you're able to see the fruits of your labor. Because a lot of people end up actually rushing or wanting to use it as a stepping stone, and as a result, they don't have the fruits of their labor. So that leads to the next question: would you imagine that your teen's faith would survive without the youth ministry and without you?
So you've got a two-part question there. And I think part and parcel of us in ministry is we often want to see the fruits of our labor, but that's not actually biblical. The fruits of our labor should never be the reason why we're involved. We're involved because God calls us. And if we never see someone come to Jesus in 25 years of ministry, that's okay, because it's not about us. And so we shouldn't try and see the fruits. However, what I think you're saying is, are we seeing transformation in the lives of young people, and are they able to stand alone on their own faith and not have the faith of an adult, a guardian, or a pastor, but on their own? And I suppose that's part and parcel of the conundrum we work with, how to treat them like adults so that they can act as adults when they step out of the safety net of high school into the liberation of varsity. Although nowadays they're hardly going to varsity, so that's the whole thing. But let's say the working world, when they have to make their own decisions, when bombarded with the fads of the world, how do they talk into the minority voices when it comes to how reformed are we, when it comes to LGBTQ, when it comes to Black Lives Matters, when it comes to political decisions, when they haven't formulated their own faith. And so that's what we need to be able to push them towards, so that they can take everything back to scripture and go, how do I have an opinion or thought or faith based on those things?
Sure.
So, I love what you're saying, Charl. And is that the nuts and bolts of youth ministry? If you had to boil it down to one thing, how have you cracked the nut that when teenagers graduate from your youth ministry, that they stick around in the church and are active participants, that when their young adult years come and they have this freedom, that they still want to serve Jesus and be involved?
So if I look at the four of us, and I don't know Tristan and Sizwe well, but it's all about relationship. The nut and the bolt is about relationship. So before you ask for a hand, you need to speak to a heart. You have to speak to the person, to their heart, if you really want to get deep into that person's life. And that means in pre-COVID, we would take a kid for coffee and care for them a little bit. We actually need to go for coffee and cake now, which is you think you're caring the same way for the child or the young adult or the person in your church. We're missing the mark. And that's why people are leaving, because they need someone who can hold their hand. They need someone who can work with them. They need someone that they can bounce ideas off of, or debates off of, or, just basic life things. And we need to be there for them. Now, that means some sheep get it and they don't leave the flock, but there's always that one lost sheep. And that's the one we have to look after and go after. But we first have to secure the 99 in the pen. We first have to corral the 99, close them and keep them safe, then go after that one. Even if that one walks away year after year after year, we have to keep going after young people. So if you aren't connecting with young people as a youth pastor on a daily basis, then you kind of have to say, why am I not doing that? Not one young person, like 10 young people, like 20 young people. If you can make an appointment with somebody, don't make a phone call. If you can make a phone call, don't send a text message. It is about personal, one-on-one communication with people, and that's how you retain people within the church or within youth ministry, even if that spans 25 years.
Charl, can I maybe jump in here, Daz, if that's okay?
No, I'm going, Tristan. I'm going. I'm intrigued here because, and we could talk forever here. But Charl, if you saying your numbers are at 100, 90, 100 teenagers, high schoolers, you as one person, how are you able to sustain those relationships, but also pursue the one as opposed to the 99, and the one is possibly the guy on the fringe, but also the one who's probably most needy of your time and attention? So how do you sustain that?
So we need to realize and remember that we serve a God that gives us power and gives us strength, gives us ability and gives us energy. And when you're doing any job, you need to do it with God's strength and God's power. And so, sure, can I look after that amount of young people? No. But can I know their names? Can I know what schools they're in? Can I know what their family situation is like? Can I reach out to them in a scheduled way? So if I have, let's say, 100 young people in my youth ministry, I make sure that in any given month I've connected with all 100 of them, whether it is a message, whether it is a phone call, whether it is a coffee. But then you need to isolate your 12, your leaders that you're spending more time with, like Jesus did. You need to train them so that they can do exactly the same. Don't assume that young adults know how to do that. Don't assume that they know how to take a young person to coffee or can train a young person on how to go pray for the sick or the elderly. Because unfortunately, we as the church have failed some of our people. And so we need to train them as if they are young in the faith. And then we need to push them. Young adults have got nothing to fight for at the moment. Every major revolution in the world in the last 150 years was fought by people between the ages of 18 and 29. The only thing we're fighting for is gender preference at the moment and racial preference. We're not fighting for big issues, or we're fighting pro-vax or anti-vax. We need to teach our young people to start revolutions, to change the way people are thinking, to break down Berlin walls, to change, racial walls that have been put up in places, to take the gospel from point A to point B. We need to push our people harder. We're treating them soft, and so we're getting soft results. We need to lead them by treating them hard if we want hard results.
Sure. Charl, there's I don't even know how to come in after that, but I was just gonna maybe backtrack a little bit, and for me it's helpful because I'm often in a predicament of like, how do I know I'm winning? Like, if you're sitting before at the year before the year starts, and you're setting out your goals and your visions, and what do you want this year to look like? After one month, for example, how do you know Branson Baptist Church is winning? Does it mean that all 12 of your leaders have messaged and phone called? And does it mean that your numbers have gone up? Does it mean that, because for me, when we say things like when we see transformation, that's hard. That's, how do you put that on? How do you know? And for me, I want to get your advice and pick your brain. How do you know you're winning?
Sure. Winning is also measured differently by different people and different leaders in different churches. Some churches are very numbers bound, others are not, others are very budget bound, others are very relational bound. But the longer you are in ministry and the older you get in ministry, the more leeway you have with leadership when it comes to these questions. If an 18-year-old is reporting to a senior pastor, he wants to see results and he wants to see them quickly. But at my age, I'm the age of the parents of the teenagers coming to youth. That's the funny part. Most of the parents that I teach, Daryl, were in my youth group at Northcliffe Union Church when I was a young 20-year-old youth pastor. 20 years have passed, and these kids are sitting with me. So when I walk up to a dad who's 45, whose kid is 20, or kid is 14, I say, dude, we used to do X and Y and Z. We used to play rugby together. Now listen to me, your boy is falling off the wagon. Here is what is going wrong, and we're able to talk him through it. Now, going back to your question, Tristan, how do you measure victory? Well, that's a tough one. But if you are faithful in what you are doing, God is faithful. God will bless that which you are faithful with. And so it's honestly a day-by-day thing. It's a step-by-step thing. There's an old Tanzanian saying which says, a little by little, a little becomes a lot. If you're constantly watering your garden's going to grow. If you constantly feed your pets are going to grow. If you consistently do X, you're going to grow. I mean, let's look at school principals. Our kids who struggle with maths, where do they go? They go to Kumon Maths. You've heard of that, right? Kumon Maths means 10 minutes every day doing mathematics, and they guarantee you 100% victory when you reach matric. That's what they guarantee any child. And yet, all we need to do is, can you imagine if you could get your teenagers to read their Bible for 10 minutes a day every day? Well, let's pause. Are you reading your Bible for 10 minutes every day? And so maybe break down 10 minutes to 5 minutes and say, look at that. So if I'm reading one chapter a day, that means I'm reading 7 chapters a week. That means I'm reading 28 chapters a month. That's where victory is. Because pull me away, pull Caesar away, pull leaders away, will the young people still read their Bibles? And that's important. So what I'm going to ask is, my battery's going flat. I'm going to walk. Daryl, may I have your permission to find my charger and plug myself in?
Absolutely. You can talk and go while you go.
All right. Does that help, Tristan, a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's just because you're in a different sort of space as to, the velocity space where me and Cis were in, and our numbers average from 20 to 30, and our leadership team itself is a little bit less. We ourselves don't have our own premises, so the victory is measured differently. And I think sometimes it's helpful to know what victory looks like, because then you're just sort of coasting along in ministry and just doing it because it's a task. But at the same time, it is a tough thing to put on paper and to actually knuckle down. But what you shared really helps a lot. So thanks for your opinion.
So I think, and I'm just plugging myself in here. Sorry, guys. I really didn't think I was going to use my phone and it would be this flat. I think if you were to put something down like training. So Sizwe talks soccer. Let's talk soccer, right? If you want to become a good soccer player, you need to spend time every day training, come rain or shine, right? Same with being a youth pastor. You want to do well as a youth pastor? Maybe you should actually spend X amount of hours or minutes a day doing youth ministry. Not getting stuck with admin. Admin's important, I get it, and you have to do admin, otherwise you're going to get into trouble. But if you want relational youth ministry to work, then you need to spend hours each day doing relational youth ministry. So how do you do that? Because your pastors and your leaders are demanding you to do X, Y, and Z. So what I do is Mondays and Wednesdays are very high-level meetings, administration. But on a Tuesday and a Thursday and a Friday, I'm not in the office. I don't step foot in the office at all. Tuesdays and Thursdays are 8 to 10 hours of meeting people back to back. Whether it's groups of twos, whether it's driving to my youth leader's office, whether it's taking them for coffee. And my leaders, my assistant leaders, I don't want them in the office on those days either. That is relational ministry days. I've got 100 people to see. I need you to help me. Go and see them. And so I've trained them over the last 3 or 4 years. Go and meet people during those days. Not one person, not 2 people, the whole day. That must be a full ministry day because that's what makes me alive. Honestly, sitting in an office all day in meetings kills me. But we have to do it sometimes, right? The same way on a soccer match, on a soccer team, you have to look at the soccer match afterwards and assess it and go, was it a good one or a bad one? We don't really want to know that, but we have to do that, right?
Sure.
If I can just, Trist is a full-time teacher and volunteering in his running of youth ministry. Seems to be obviously has a lot more time this year on his hands as the church intern who's serving in youth as well. How do you, I'm sure, Charl, not all your youth leaders are full-time paid staff, and I would guess majority are volunteers. Words of encouragement or advice to a Trist who's teaching in a school with not as much time? How does he knuckle down in his week and focus on youth ministry? What should priorities be?
So I have a lot of marketplace leaders. That means people with full-time jobs that are working, young adults and adults. My leaders range from, I start my leadership training at 16 or 17 with my leaders as assistant leaders, and then they go right up to adults. And I use adults, when I say adults, 35, 36, 45-year-olds in my leadership and a whole bunch of young adults. We break into smaller groups, and basically what I say to them is, you've got 5 to 8 people in your group. Connect with those 5 to 8 people once a week, just once a week. And a connect is a WhatsApp or a phone call, or whether they're in a group together. Find out what's happening in their lives and pray for them. Wish them happy birthday when it's their birthday. And once a month, do something fun with them. Corona or no corona, level 1 or level 5. Meet once a month and go for a milkshake. Meet once a month and go for a walk. Meet once a month. Now, once a month is 10 connections a year if you take away December and you take away January, because those are the difficult months. 10 connections where an adult is actually investing in my life. But not just any adult, an adult that's committed to be in my life for a year. Because young people have got adults in their life, but adults are dropping them. Whether it's a mom and dad, an uncle, a guardian, a teacher, they promise the world and they don't deliver. So if you want to be a leader, commit to a year, minimum of a year. That's it. You have to commit to the life of this young person. It takes a young person 18 months to trust you before they're really going to tell you what's wrong. So you need to be in their lives for even longer than a year if you really want to know what's happening in their life. And then they're maturing. So 2 years, that means if they're in grade 8, then they're in grade 10. If they're in grade 10, then they're in matric. If they're in grade 7, then they're in grade 9. But 2 years, man, after 2 years, those people will treat you like you their guardian angel, because they'll trust you because you've been around and you've cared for them for 2 years through the relationships, through the parental fighting, through the bad academics. But it's about staying on par after that one sheep over and over and over.
Sure. I'm taking notes as we speak, by the way. So when I'm looking down, just know I'm just writing stuff down. because I think it's so
Brew, I didn't
powerful.
see you look down once. Brew, you're just looking up the whole time. You're not even looking down. So I don't know how you're doing this now.
Been taking down some notes. It really is inspiring, and parts of it, I think I love what you said about admin and taking time to do relational youth ministry, because I think it's so easy to get lost in the paperwork, in the admin things of youth ministry, and really neglecting the relationship side and not really making time for that. Because like you said, especially where I'm at, it's you wanting to establish yourself, so know that you can be trusted, and the best way to be trusted is to show quick results by doing those meetings, by being in those spaces, handing in those forms. And it's so easy, and I found it so easy to get lost in those things. And maybe again, if you want to unpack some of the disciplines that you maybe go through to keep that in the forefront of your mind. I know you spoke about setting up those days. So I think you said Tuesday, Thursday, Friday that you spoke about. So what are some of those things that help keep that mission in the forefront of your mind?
I suppose he's where it just takes discipline. You know, when you're playing soccer, if you played long enough, you know how to receive the ball when someone kicks you the ball. The more you play, you don't have to teach someone how to receive the ball. A good soccer player can receive a ball well and pass a ball on well, right? So I'm just using soccer, but you like soccer here, okay? And so the same thing with youth ministry. The more you are consistent in what you're doing, the easier it is to do it without thinking about it. But if you put somebody on the soccer field that never played soccer, well, then you first have to teach them how to receive the ball before they can pass the ball. And so if you are young in your ministry, well, then focus on first receiving it before you try and implement some senior youth guru's ideas on the small things. Go on the small things, and then as they become natural, then it's just discipline. It's literally what I need to do. And I fight for those days, hey? If there's a meeting that my senior pastor schedules on a Thursday, I tell him I can't come. Now, I can do that. Why? Because one, I'm older than him. Two, he respects me. And three, when I signed the contract, I said, if you want a flourishing youth ministry, you cannot steal my times with long meetings. Now, I'm never disrespectful. Okay, so I'm saying this very blasely. I'll always respect my elders and my leaders, and Daryl knows that. Okay, there's no such thing, even though he's younger or older, doesn't matter. But I fight for those hours. So unless it is absolutely necessary, he won't bother me. And if I need to leave because something happens, he knows that as well. And so that's why it's so good to be on par with your leadership. Let them know your heart so that they know you need to know theirs and they need to know yours. And so that's where it works. And that often takes time. So Daryl will know this. You've been in ministry a while. Probably takes 7 years. Proper hard work to solidify a proper relationship with senior leadership in any church. So until your hearts can actually work well together.
Yeah, I think I was going to come in there and say youth are still often blamed for stuff that happens around the church. You know, was the youth ministry. You know, and what you're saying here is critical, because there's obviously this relationship you have to nurture with senior leadership, and you have to gain their trust. But I want to just say with Trist and Sizwe, they've been given a lot of authority at their young ages. They have been faithful. They've been in the church for some time, and obviously that trust has grown with senior leadership. But I also, Charl, as an older guy, for you and myself, our heart is to look after a Tristan and look after a Sizwe, and we don't want to burn them out and burden them with things that they can't carry right now. In terms of some wisdom to prevent burnout from a Tristan and Sizwe, how do we help them with their limitations? And from our side, you know, how do we guard against overloading them? We love their zeal, we love their passion, we want them to be in for the long haul, but we have to protect them.
All right. Let me see if I can answer the question with setting up an answer. Let me see if I can set up an answer. The average lifespan of a youth pastor in our country is sitting at 18 months. People give up before the 2-year mark. And so why is that? Well, working in a church is actually difficult. Let's be real. I have got scars all over my back with the trucks that have been ridden over my back. And Daryl will even know some of those scars because it's not easy. Being a rocket scientist, now that's easy because the variables never change. Youth ministry, pastoral ministry, just working in a church, it's hard because there's a spiritual aspect to it. It's not that it's complicated. It's that you're dealing with people and people are sinners. And so when you come into something, look at the long haul, look at the long picture, realize it's not a sprint, but it's a marathon. For someone who runs marathons, I know what that means. That means when you get to the 33rd kilometer, that is the worst place for any marathon runner. You hit your wall and you want to die and give up. And if you haven't drank enough water, you dehydrate and you can't carry on. And that's where a lot of people give up. And so whether you're a young intern or a youth leader, whether you're a full-time pastor, ask yourself, have I hit that wall? Because if I'm there, how am I going to get through it? And so the best kind of support is support of leadership. If you have that, cool. If you don't have that, find your own leadership to support you. So I run a fraternal in Northern Joburg for most of the Northern Joburg youth pastors, guys who are as young as Sizwe and guys who are as old as Dan Riddell. And we sit together once every 6 weeks pre-corona, but now it's like once every 2 months. And when we get together, we're not saying who's doing what better. We just talk as men and women and we say, are you coping? Where aren't you coping? How can I pray for you? How can I support you? And so I need to be able to support Sizwe in what he's struggling with. Tristan needs to be able to support me in what I'm struggling with because we're in it together. We need to talk together. We're not out to do each other. We have to support each other. And then the idea is also to talk. Find somebody who you can talk to and can support you. And if it's in your leadership team, brilliant. And if it's not, find somebody else. So Daryl and I share a network of friends that I speak to when I'm not coping. I'll phone the guy and say, that's it, I'm out. I'm never doing this in my life. And then I have someone who speaks some sense into me and goes, okay, just calm yourself down. All right, you're having a bad day. This is how I think you should deal with it. And then I go back and we talk. And I meet with youth pastors as much as I meet with youth leaders because I need to be rubbing shoulders with those younger than me, those who have been in ministry for 10 years and those who are older than me as well. It's very important to rub shoulders with those in ministry.
Sure.
Owen just did a 360, sorry.
Sure. And then talk to us about the type of people that you bring onto your leadership. What are you looking for? Who is that person? Who do you bring on to lead?
So, often when we're in youth leadership, we bring anyone into leadership that has a pulse. Now, God can use anyone. I mean, you can even use a donkey, let's be real. But one also needs to look at your capacity. To lead a donkey is hard work, right? So you have to ask yourself, how much energy do you have to lead how many donkeys? And so you can use anyone, right? Daryl's laughing because he knows. And so you kind of have to ask yourself, God, who do I bring in? Now, you can bring in the most influential person into your youth ministry to be a leader. When I say influential in school, influential in sport, influential in a rugby team. And those are good people. They will bring the crowds, but they're not the stick-arounders. They only come because you have used them. They have the ability to bring people, and so you need them in your team. But remember, they move very quickly. The head boy who's got all the accolades, the head girl who is very involved and whatever, because they're such high-moving and high-equipped people, they'll come in, but they'll also go out as quick as they come in. So use them. Use them for their talent. Use them for their ability. Use them for their eloquence. But let me tell you who God uses. He uses the Gideons, and he uses the people that are hiding in the wine press. So when you look at your youth ministry, for the person who's going to take over from you, find the person that is the most unlikely person to be the leader. Because that was me when I was in youth ministry. There was no ways I was ever going to be in youth. I was the quietest guy, probably hiding in the wine press. And God says, I will take someone who is nobody, and I will make something. I will take someone who's humble and quiet. And so build into those people's lives. But in the meanwhile, look at people with a servant heart. Someone who knows Jesus, someone who's already serving without even knowing that he or she is serving, someone who is always there, committed, and then give them small tasks to do and see how they can do it. So if the fruit is low and hanging, then pluck the fruit and speak into their lives. Speak power, speak life, speak words into their lives, and see how they grab hold of it. And sometimes you need to walk with somebody and let them go, and sometimes you walk with somebody and then you retain them. And so that's why we have an assistant leadership program, which lasts between 18 months and 2 years with our young guys, our 16-year-olds. And let me tell you, probably only 70% of them actually then still stick around when they're 18. But those that stick around, man, they'll stick around until after varsity, even when they get married.
Another 360 there.
Yeah, but I don't know why the phone keeps falling. Sorry, but it's pretty cool, man. 360s are not bad.
So listen, we again, I've got thousands of questions here, but we are pressed for time. Charl, we are reopening our youth ministry in the next week or two. We stopped pre-COVID, so maybe March, Trist, was when we kind of stopped. So we got a different opportunity to reboot some of the systems and the likes. Just for you, Charl, sitting at where we at in terms of, we've got some fairly young volunteers, we've got some new volunteers, we've got some of the older guys who've kind of just decided they need a break. Tristan said we're on about 20 or 30 on a Friday evening. For you, being in our position, what are the criticals to have in your Friday evening program? But more than that, where should we be focusing our time and energy to make sure we maximize the last 3 months of the year and build momentum for next year and where we kick off again?
You're kind of asking me, how do you enter the Russian Grand Prix when you've got a tomboy scooter running on fumes? But let's see if I can help you figure this out, right? So relational, relevant, and radical. Those are your 3 R's that I always work with youth ministry. Okay. The biggest thing is relational. Be relational. And so sometimes being relational is actually being clever. So if you wanted to start a youth ministry, put boundaries on it. Build to the future. So what I did at one youth church is I started youth ministry with grade 7s, 8s, and 9s. No grade 10s, 11s, or matrics involved. You flip it around from the world. The world says the older guys get everything. Change it. Why? Because in 5 years' time, that grade 7 will be in matric and they'll still be with you. The matrics are all gone. They're gone. They're going to studies. They're going to Cape Town. They're going to work in a flat in Pretoria, even though they're never going on campus. Do not spend your life building into matrics. Love them. Care for them. If they're around and they want to be leaders, pull them in. But don't start with trying to get fresh matrics, because they aren't your future if you want to build your youth ministry. Go young. Hit the grade 7s that are coming into grade 8. Hit the grade 8s. Hit the grade 9s. Because in 3 years' time, those grade 9 girls are in matric, and every boy in that high school will come to that youth ministry if that matric girl is there. That's what you're working with. Work with the variables you understand. You know, no matter what you do, if you have a good relationship with young people, you could put up the dumbest program. Kids are robust. They'll forget about dumbness, but they'll come because there's a girl there or there's a guy there. And then there's also somebody who cares for them that's there. And so for the last 3 months, man, make it fun. Seriously, we don't go overboard with our programs now on a Friday. Friday night at the moment is 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock because it allows for curfew with a level 1 or level 3. You rock up at 7. There's some chill time outside and they get to chill. Anything from basketball to soccer, from pool to table tennis, from whatever, from Foursquare to Uno, lots of loud music. There must always be worship. So there must be fun, there must be worship, and there must be the word. And so throw in some worship, throw in the word, and then small groups. Small groups is where young people just like talk. And so you have good disciple makers. So don't have facilitators. Don't have babysitters who are looking after teenagers. Have people that are disciple makers, that know how to take young people from point A to point B in their faith.
That's really cool. And sorry, guys, let me just go one more, and then Sis and Trist, you can wrap it up. Do you find your teenagers engaging on a Friday evening when it comes to small groups? I know it's a critical time, but is it the most ideal time to try and take them to A to B on a late Friday evening when you've been cranking the volume and the atmosphere in setting up for this moment? You just don't want them to dial out, you know?
Well, that's the only time we have them. So now we're in lockdown 1, so there's a little bit of sports happening. But lockdown 3, there was no sports happening. So most of our guys were there. All our netball Gauteng players were there. All our swimmers were there. Okay, so now they're active. If we only have them for 45 minutes or 2 hours on a Friday, man, we have to share the gospel of Jesus with them. And they'll listen to you if there's relationship. So that means if you need to train your leaders to first be disciple makers, to know how to engage with young people, then maybe that's where you should start your youth ministry. Rather prepare them for the next 3 months, so that come January, your leaders know your people. Your people are the ones that will listen to your leaders. So whether you're talking about a tough topic or whether you're bringing a point across, they'll listen because you've spent time in their lives. Does that help?
Absolutely. Very good. Trist, do you want to go?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that's so powerful, so helpful. And I think for us, the next 2-3 months are vital. And we actually have a little meeting tomorrow with our leaders. And so, yeah, that space is going to be important for us to at least channel our energy positively for the last few months. Because I think it does, like Daryl said, it takes some momentum into the new year. So critical few months. And I'm excited that you didn't say anything overly complicated, just to make it fun. There's nothing complicated about that, which means my job is easier tomorrow. I don't need to come with this huge agenda. And thanks for sharing all your thoughts, Charl. We really have been blessed by them, and looking forward to hang out with you maybe over a coffee sometime soon.
I'd like that. And just on that, Trist, you know why we won the World Cup rugby? Because we also, at one time before the last matches, we trained in secret, and then people wanted to know what we were doing. Youth ministry isn't a secret training. I do not have something I'm willing to hide from the whole world. I want you to win, and I want to win. So if you're building a youth ministry, pop your youth leaders in a car, Daryl. Come and visit a youth ministry. Go and check what other people are doing. Have a meeting with other youth pastors and other youth leaders. Let them. So if you've got 10 people in your youth, shove them in cars and go and visit another youth ministry and go and do youth at their church so that they can get a feel for what's happening. And then you say to the teens, you want that? Well, then you have to help us build this. And so you get buy-in from the young people and the leaders as well.
Charl, I was just going to say that we didn't win the World Cup from that. We won it from the bomb squad.
True story.
Sis, before you close, Sis, Charl, exactly what you're saying here is because you and I have different perspectives from different churches and different circles. When I try and verbalize and explain some of the perspective I bring to Tristan and Sizwe, for example, a summer camp that has 1,000 teenagers compared to a smaller camp, it's very difficult to grasp if you haven't been there. Yeah. And so, man, I would love for these guys to spend some more time. I'd love to spend some more time with you as well. And I mean, we'd love to chat about this youth leader training as well. Maybe you could assist with some of that stuff. So yeah, very keen. And again, historically speaking, Charl, we had a power youth network at one stage. I'd love to be part of rebuilding some of that again. I know you've got this thing in the north, but in the south, we're quite isolated. We don't hang out with many other churches. So, I mean, we'd love to connect and do. I mean, we did some great events, historically speaking, again. Monte Casino, taking over the movie house there. Worship Reload. It was mind blowing and groundbreaking at the time, and it hasn't happened for many years. And I'm asking why. And if we can get youth guys like minded to play together as opposed to compete, man, I think we can shift the kingdom.
Yeah.
Sis, what you got to say to wrap up there, bud?
Sorry, Daryl. The thing is, you need to make memories. So those of you who are in youth ministry, I can't remember. I can remember one talk from when I was in youth in ministry, but I can remember 10 amazing Friday nights and 10 amazing camps and 10 amazing weekends I had. Create memories with these young people. Create gees with them. So we can't necessarily. So 2 years ago, we hired all the canoes that we could find and took 150 teenagers down the Vaal River for 3 days on canoes. Now that's huge, right? Now this year we can't do that because of COVID, but they all want to go to Gold Reef City. So I'm like, well, instead of us just going there, why don't we invite as many youth groups as we can to join us on the 4th of December, and we just emerge on Gold Reef City. And so other young people can see other young people from other churches going, wait a minute, we're bigger than this. Now that's an idea. It's an idea that doesn't cost us money. Yes, it's going to cost the kids money, but whether you bring 20 Sizwe and Tristan brings 5 and Daryl you bring 3 and I bring 14, then it becomes a number. And then we arrange to do lunch together, all the youth groups. We sit together at a certain place and we just go, look at this. We belong to a bigger body of Christians. And that'll stick in their head forever.
You've always been the visionary, sir. And I want to brag again slightly about you here. Tell these guys about your world record, your Guinness World Record. I don't know if you still hold it, but how you went about that with your youth group. Listen to this, guys.
That was many years ago, 2004. I don't even know if Sizwe was born then, 2002. So we hired out a cinema in Northgate and we watched 35 movies in a row without stopping. So I got the teenagers to fill the whole cinema with hundreds of teens, and you had to stay awake for 55 hours, which is, let me tell you, exceptionally difficult. And so we got the rules in place, we got the record, and we started doing it. And we would have carried on longer, but then, teens started hallucinating without so much sleep. It's actually not humanly possible to stay awake. But let me tell you, the kids that went on that trip, and if they see me to this day, they're adults, they've got children, we walk past each other in the street, and the first thing I say, Charl, do you remember when we did that together? And that's the kind of gees you need to build in your youth ministry.
Sure. Yeah, we can close in prayer.
What's your question?
Jeez, man, it's so inspiring. And like right now, I have a whole list of stuff that I'm writing and doing. It really is inspiring, and just love how Daryl said and just explained your character as the visionary. And I think that's something that we really can grow in as a group. I think we fear dreaming big. And as a result, we don't even do the small things. So I'm inspired and what I'm taking away is it's okay to dream big, and we should, in fact, because that inspires you to do even the tasks that are difficult, because you still have that big picture in mind. So yeah, and for me, just that's my take home. It's just to think big.
But Sizwe, also don't be scared to fail before you hit that big. So as much as Daryl made me share about something that worked, let me tell you, there are many things that didn't work. There are many things that fell flat. There are many things that failed completely.
Can I share one? Charl, remember being in a meeting where someone suggested we ride a donkey down Beyers Nordier.
Oh my greatness!
During Easter,
with a cross on, yes,
with a wooden cross on. Hey,
yeah,
crazy stuff.
and sometimes you have to listen to these people and go, okay, that's not a bad idea. That's an idea. I mean, good ideas are born out of people sharing, but you also need to know how to navigate it. And that's where relationship comes in, where I can turn to Daryl and say, Daryl, I love your enthusiasm, but let's just be a little bit practical here. Like, how many teenagers want to do that? Like, you're going to burn your youth ministry on the stake by doing that. That's not cool, bro. You need to be a little bit cool.
Cool, Charl. You're an absolute legend, and it's been so lucky chatting. We really hope we can do this again sometime soon with you, if you're available. To tap into your wisdom and your experience, and even to maybe just get your youth guys involved somewhere, somehow, and for us to get together somewhere, that'd be phenomenal. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. And we hope to chat to you guys soon. Thank you for everyone who's joined us. If you found value, like and share. And let's get our youth ministries pumping for Jesus. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you. Ciao.